Murray Middleton. Welcome to Booktopia.
Thanks a lot for having me in your aristocratic studio.
I'm sure that people have now heard of your name because you're the winner of this year's Australian Vogel Award.
Yeah, hopefully by the time it screens they will have. I think there's 23 million people in the country, so maybe a very small percentage might know my name after this.
I've read a lot of the Vogel winners over the last few years, and there have been some standouts. And there occasionally they don't have any winner, which is I find the integrity of that's incredible. But I can imagine this turning up in a pile of manuscripts and standing out from the beginning, and the judges having conversations about this as that book on the side that they all love and go through. Because to me, out of the stuff that I've been reading recently, this is great.
Okay, I can't possibly think about it on those terms because I'm too inside it and invested in it. I've tried to read some past winners because when you submit you want to know what kind of things work. Particularly Rowan Wilson book, The Roving Party, and also even going back to 95, I think it was Andrew McGahan's book. They both write with a lot of conviction, and I tried to both be quite economical with words and strip it back, particularly like McGahan did with praise. I thought, yes, if I write with conviction and am careful of what I do and don't say, that it will at least be a very accessible book, but I couldn't guarantee that it would be a good book, of course.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't read like a debut. So if I spent years in a second-hand bookshop, and I used to just wander to the shelves in my own shop, pick out books and pick them up and start reading them, not knowing anything about the author. And it wouldn't have surprised me if I was handed this and I opened it up, that you were some sort of 65-year-old, been there, done it all kind of, I've seen everything there is in the world kind of guy. But you're a young man with this great knowledge about humanity. How'd you manage all that?
Well, for starters, I've got the body of a 65-year-old man, so I'm able to sort of understand certain things, and I'll have to have some surgery probably sooner rather than later. I think probably, firstly, being very quiet, definitely an observer. People interest me a lot. I like watching them, possibly more than speaking with them. And also, I have been at it a long time. So, I had a crack at the Vogel in my mid-20s with a book. So I learnt how to finish something then. It was absolute garbage. But I feel like I've been doing it a long time. So if it doesn't read like a debut, it's probably that. And because I've drafted them all so many times. Some of these, particularly some of the earlier ones, drafted over 20 times individually. So I've just gone over them and shaved off as much of the fat as I can.
Well, you've gone past, because there's that mode in when people do a lot of editing over work, the freshness dies. But these don't feel like that. This is one of those ones that writers will bitch about, because you have that sense of having just put it down once, which is really irritating. Because irritating for the author, because the author goes, "Don't you know how much I sweated?" And we're going, "Oh, it sounds like you just jotted it down." But it is, there's that gift of being able to edit something back into freshness.
Oh, I agree. They're never going to be fresh to me again, but to create that illusion that they are that first draft and so stripped back. You need to be accountable for every word and the ways that people are going to interpret every word. So bouncing it so much with Allen and Unwin, and there were 3 distinct editing processes that took place with different people's eyes. So that forced me to be accountable all over again. So that's how that might come across, but I assure you it's been a lot of hard work to create that illusion over many years.
Well, in Australia we're having a kind of mini renaissance of the short story, and it's great to see, because I'm a great lover of the short story. Maxine's book, we have Karen and Dobie's book came out. Maxine's been talked about, it's winning out for the Stellars, I think, as well. But I think there's sort of a few years there where people weren't reading short stories, but I got into this, and I just love, in the way that, I don't want to freak you out here, but in the way that Carver creates a world within a few pages, and you dip in, you get this bit of information, this bit of knowledge about humanity, and then drop out, and they just continue on, and you've just met them for a little bit, like you're in here with a train journey, and there's a short story about a train journey, and 2 people meet on that train, and they're not going to meet again, and yet that pivotal moment, you get something out of each of them, some sort of revelation out of each of them, and then it moves on. Those 2 characters, we know, we can feel it, move on, which is extraordinarily hard to do because there's that tendency in short stories to have that that Roald Dahl thing, or the what's the one of those I can't think of his name now. Where there's a kind of pull at the end, where everything comes together, and oh, look at that magic.
Yeah. I knew you'd drop the C-bomb at some point, Carver, in this interview. Yeah, I've tried not to. I could just talk about him the rest of the interview, but you might sever it there. Yeah, getting that point of intersection in these lives where it's going to be accessible to a reader, and the characters are arguably at their most interesting point to other people. I've worked really hard at that. I've often experimented. My old supervisor told me, just for the sake of it, to shave off the first and last paragraph of my stories just to see what happened there. But I think you've also got to be so acutely aware of, well, to me, what's happening in these stories. I need to be able to answer every question you've got about the characters. So I can, if there's any endings you're confused about, I can answer for them. I can be accountable, but I just haven't given you all the information.
I don't. That's another thing, is that I didn't have that feeling like, oh, I've been cheated out.
Good.
I didn't get that. I had the full meal. That's the great thing about it, is that each one of these stories, when it ended, it made sense. It wasn't obscure. I got the meaning, or I felt I got the meaning you were trying to convey. What I also like about, because I'm a bit of a misery guts, me, and I much prefer something which is dark and introspective than to be light and cheerful and have all the tropes of modern fiction involved. And I like it when someone observes humanity as it is and looks at the difficulties of modern life. And you touch on so many different issues here in different age groups. How do you manage the drifting through the age groups? Is that mainly through your observations?
Partially. I mean, they obviously have made a concerted effort to try and portray or construct a wide range of characters in this collection, and also to give a different range of endings. I mean, yeah, a Misery Guts might enjoy certain endings, but some of them by chance become quite happy. Other ones are a little open, such as the bushfire story. I don't think there's ever any promises in that story, which is the opening story. I just go about them. I suppose Winton often starts with place. I quite like starting with place, but there's often stories on the news or a throwaway story at the pub or something like that gets me ticking and kind of inhabit the characters. But I do, it mightn't sound magical or anything like that, I do research the crap out of these characters and try and understand 10 times more about them than I'm going to put in there. So most of them have been several years in the making and several drafts in the making. And the train one was something, it was so painstaking to know how to sensitively write about that veteran. It's still something that, troubles me. I've just had to let go of it, but I wanted to be as sensitive as I could about that veteran.
So he's warning you, as you're writing him, to be sensitive about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because in the story, he's giving you a lesson in...
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just brilliant.
It turned in on itself, the writing of that story. I mean, is that postmodernism or a cop-out? Who knows what that is, but it's very much about... it's in two parts, that story, and it sort of makes me chuckle. I guess you'd call it a dark comedy if you were that way inclined. Yeah, it's as much about the sort of cannibalisation process when someone uses someone else for the sake of a story, and the way writers do that as well. But yeah, he's not based on anyone in particular.
Yeah, and the strangers on the train, the murdered one is you.
Yeah, I'm the one who comes off worse in that story. I'm confident of that much.
So when you're talking about this massive amount of research and these ideas that sort of hang around with you for that long, do you have any of the urges to go, no, these guys deserve a longer story, or do you? I mean, do you intend to be a short story writer, or are you going to be? Is this a clearing of the throat for an entry into novel writing?
Well, the three of us were. There's a bit of horseplay before this interview about that, with me not being allowed to write a collection until St Kilda wins a premiership in the AFL.
It's in print here.
It's actually in print, so I've signed my death warrant, and I probably will never get to write another collection now. So yeah, I suppose I did that I was very technical about that, so that opens up the chance for me to write a novel. And I think there's certainly one of the stories in here. There's a story about a man who hits someone and sort of drives off into the night, and that was the start of a novel for me that in the end I felt was more comfortable in a present tense short story.
Do just got me. That one, really, the tension in that one, and it's so like it blindsided me too because I wasn't even going there in my head, and then just bang, brilliant.
All right, well, that was definitely one of the week when I was editing this with Kate Kennedy in the she was referred as a sort of mentor to me from Allen and Unwin, and that was one we both weren't happy with, and we decided that I should really have a crack in present tense to give it that sense of immediacy. I was always playing off the crime and really like Crime and Punishment, but particularly the phase after the murder in that, what the sort of stream of consciousness passages, and so I thought I can really condense that into a story, and I want the reader to feel tied in the chest if I can make that happen. So
you did.
That's one. That's one.
Congratulations, Murray, again on the Vogel win.
Thanks.
Murray's book is available from booktopia.com.au right now.